Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Mission Impossible, directed by Brian De Palma, Mission Impossible 2 by John Woo, Adaptation by Spike Jonze. We have newly released No Hard Feelings by Gene Stupnitsky, and finally, Asteroid City, directed by Wes Anderson. It's going to be a great show, folks, so stay tuned and enjoy. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing,
Tom,
buddy?
how's it going, Tom?
It's going okay for me. I kind of like this week of movies. How was it for you?
It was good. Got some homework done for Mission Impossible. Really enjoyed
prep work.
Yeah, really enjoyed Adaptation. For one.
Okay.
And honestly, happy I saw both of these in theater releases. There's a lot of talk online. I mean, well, box office wise, I guess they're both kind of, not doing too well.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of talk online, both for No Hard Feelings with like raunchy comedies coming back, and as well with Wes Anderson just being Wes Anderson. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I was happy to watch all these. It's been an exhausting week. We have the coming storm of franchises for the next 3 weeks. So
I know they bled into this week.
Yeah.
I mean, get ready, folks. It's about to hit.
For real.
But no, like I said, I like this week a lot. I'm excited that we're doing the Mission Impossibles. What started as a joke, I don't know if we ever actually thought we would do them this quickly into the podcast.
Right.
We're on episode 89, which is exciting. And
Yep.
100's around the corner. But let's just jump back to it. Let's start.
Sure.
Yeah, the reason why we're doing 2.
Yep.
Because,
There's a lot.
foreshadowing. There may or may not be 5 next week or whenever it's coming out.
Yeah. So getting ahead of it.
When is it again? It's first we have Jones.
Yep. Next
Then
is Insidious, which I know you don't want horror, but it's a perfect 5 slot. So, and I've never seen any of them.
You're saying that there's 5 Insidious movies?
Oh yeah, and then Red Door is the new one.
No other big movie coming out, huh?
You're trying to reschedule it as much as possible.
It's okay. It's all right. Anyway.
And then we got Mission Impossible.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So let's start back in 1996, where it all started. This is Mission Impossible, Vin. How was this now? What? Old film.
Straight up old.
27 years?
Yeah. And I didn't realize it was 96 either. I mean, like that.
I thought it was...
I don't
like
know.
Later
I thought it was like 99 and then Mission Impossible 2 right after. I guess it just feels weird, Impossible 2 coming out 4 years later in the world that we live in today.
I thought Mission Impossible 2 actually came out in like 98.
Yeah.
So I was surprised how late that came out.
For sure. So where, yearly releases are a normal thing today, that just kind of felt weird for me. Mission Impossible, 1996. We got a movie with Big Dick De Palma, a big-time director we haven't seen for a while on the podcast. Brian De Palma is probably a prime choice for a future director's study. We've covered 1987's The Untouchables, with, of course, De Niro, and 1976 Carrie on previous episodes, so you can check that out if you want to, folks.
You weren't the biggest Carrie fan.
I surprisingly not. And I liked De Palma as a director, too. That was a very disappointing one. Considering that was supposed to be a good tentpole of that Stephen King episode. So I was real disappointed. I still remember how just weird the music was in Carrie. Oh my God. It was like this Scooby-Doo. It was terrible. But his stretch, why it would be a director's study, folks, is his stretch from 1980 to 1984, Scarface included, would be an awesome watch list. And I think between that And I'll give a sneak preview. Maybe a Judd Apatow writing study would be two on the docket for coming
comedies in the future. Comedies in the future.
Everyone's saying it. But yeah, Mission Impossible is now, of course, a tentpole spy action franchise. But back in 1996, it was a simple remake of a 60s TV show by the same name. If anything, 1995's GoldenEye showed that an old dusty brand like James Bond could be a modern hit, so maybe others could too. And even though we have to wait 4 years for the sequel to this, you can feel the money-making potential right away, if only in Tom Cruise.
And Tom Cruise is still on fire right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you take, early or mid-80s to now, he's still, one of the biggest.
Yeah, same year, you have Jerry Maguire, and
That's right. Yep.
this is, Tom Cruise is a huge star by this point. We follow Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, a master spy who takes his undercover work to impossible levels through near-perfect disguises and a razor-sharp awareness. These are really the character-defining features of Ethan. He's not a superhero. He's not a super spy. Maybe yet. I don't know. Only 2 under my belt. But those are really what makes him a character we follow. These his awareness to catch literally everything in a moment, and then of course these iconic disguises. We open up with IMF, Impossible Mission Force. Talk about the worst naming.
There's some cheesiness to the whole thing, to the whole franchise.
Yeah, I actually tried watching a little bit of the '60s show, and I don't know, not for me. I like old TV, but
any major actor from that or came out of that, or
no? Actually, there was some drama in that the original cast, I guess, semi-boycotted this film on release in '96 because no one came back from the TV show, and
okay, so a little bit of like a Shatner when Star Trek
sure
came back.
Yeah, absolutely. So all these angry old TV actors, but at the height of this group's success, IMF, as a team, we see them and we join in with them, presumably where the TV show left off, or even if there's no connection to the final closing days of the TV show, it is still at the height of this group's effectiveness. When the gang takes on a mission to secure a high-value asset list, it appears to be a job in the bag, but the last thing Ethan expected was the tables to be turned on him, and soon finds himself on the run with no allies to help. And that's what we have kind of starting off with Mission Impossible 1. Tom, I walked into this thinking it was going to be some standard spy action. My God, does this film need some life in it? It is a snoozer.
Wow.
It is not. I almost didn't want to call it spy action. I mean, it's not Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy slow, but it's not fast. It's not a fun movie.
That surprises me. I mean, I think I saw bits and pieces of this movie, but I'm much more familiar with the newer ones.
Sure.
Like even like 3 on.
Absolutely. I think that's the case for a lot of people.
Is this your first time watching, or maybe like a long years and years ago?
I think it has to be. Mainly because my memory of this, I thought it was Mission Impossible 1. It turns out my memory of this is Mission Impossible 2. So
wow. Okay. So not. It's an hour and 50 minutes, but slow, huh?
Yeah. It's a little brooding. It's not very fun. It is very spy-oriented, which is good, but even the action, it's just like, wow, there was just some really lacking elements here. Even the heist aspect, just some lacking elements.
I just got very excited that we're doing all 7 of these.
Oh,
I like the idea. I'm excited about it now.
Sure.
Because I would love to go through the steps and also just like, here's when it turns into this.
Yes.
Here when it turns into this.
Absolutely.
This is a film where now we get, you know what I mean?
Yep.
If we're starting like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me scratch my head. Because again, like you, I know what this franchise has become, Fallout forward and whatnot. This movie is in desperate need of a strong villain or a much stronger inciting incident to make us care, basically. I mean, it's just a perfect example in the start of the film that there's something there when the tables are turned on Ethan, but it just plays out so bland. All of the film plays out very bland, even when tense moments come along. They are without context to make it feel real for us. Stakes of the plot are communicated, but not felt. The mystery list of names, that is the MacGuffin of the film, and even the betrayal that put Ethan on his heels, it all just feels extremely weak. In fact, weak enough to probably skip this even in a franchise deep dive for anyone interested. interested.
Really?
Yeah.
You can say skip number 1?
I really do think so. I mean, despite maybe an introduction to Ethan Hunt's... Boy, do they throw it out in 2. He's a whole nother beast in 2. So, I don't know. I think this is an odd case where, I'm usually a fan. First one's usually the best.
Right.
This is not the case
I'm
going to
put a caveat in there for you.
Okay.
We'll pencil this in.
Yep.
Won't use permanent marker because after you watch all 7,
yes,
maybe something happens in 6 and you're just like, maybe you need to watch number 1 now.
Right. Series
there you go.
retrospect.
I got you back.
Right. 1996, like we talked about, a big year for Tom Cruise. Both this and Jerry Maguire came out. And on a positive note, Ethan Hunt as a character is cemented from the very start. His determination, the spy skill set being consistent for the whole franchise. We also get some cool additions to the crew. Jean Reno, 2 years after his role in The Professional, a must-watch on the website.
Yes, sir.
Ving Rhames, of course, 2 years after his peak role as Marcellus Wallace in Pulp Fiction. Ving Rhames also becomes a series regular as well. So that would be the one inclusion of maybe seeing the history of the crew. If you really love. That'd be slight way to watch this. But the flavor of the spy action is a lot of gadget work here, in line with just what the spy action was in the 90s. Camera glasses, lock-melting gum, print scanners, and of course the iconic rubber disguise mask, which what surprised me the most is we don't see the tech behind it. Again, just going off of Fallout in my mind, we see like he's got to do like a 3D scan of the dude's face in the bathroom.
Right.
There's no like fundamental explanation of the tech, which I don't necessarily need, but I just figured that was a given, honestly.
That's funny. It's just there. It's just part of it.
Yeah. He's just got a bunch of really good masks.
Apparently, it's one of the more like true, non-crazy things that is actually possible. Like the CIA for decades and decades have actually had extremely good mask work.
Interesting.
Anyway,
who
really knows?
You put on some sunglasses. Danny Elfman composes here, bringing borderline absurd amount of bongos to the to the arrangement, and just the percussion work is just huge in this. It's a fun score, but I got to give a shout out to one of my favorite composers, Lalo Schifrin, who created the iconic theme back in the 60s, which is used all over this film in the original style. I bring it up specifically for this one is because, at least for what I saw at 2, and I'm assuming as we move into more and more modern renditions of this, we don't get this original arrangement of this of that theme, and here it was on great display. And yeah, I mean, I'll wait until maybe we go back to like Dirty Harry or something to really sing Lalo Schifrin's praises, but just such a great theme, the Mission Impossible theme. It's just so good. So immediately makes you feel like a spy, and all those bongos playing in the background.
Yeah, it's good. I have to say, it's I don't know if it's in my top 5.
No? Okay.
There's just something about all the Mission Impossibles just has a silliness to it. I think the silly version of Bond.
Here we go.
I know.
The feud begins.
Did I bring it up
7
too
comments,
early?
1 out of 7 have been tackled.
I understand silly Bond is Austin Powers, but and I even think the way Mission Impossible develops itself, they don't do a lot of copycat stuff. I think they sometimes do, but they're always trying to be better and everything like that. They're not just taking from the pit. And in some ways, Bond might have even pulled a little bit from the later Mission Impossibles or John Wick or Jason Bourne.
Sure, absolutely.
To get that grittier Craig.
Especially with Bourne, absolutely.
Right, so it's not like they're not serious films or anything like that, but something about it, it's a little bit more jokey or just way too about friends or something. And and I get that in the score. I think the score has
a playfulness to it.
Yes, that I don't really like.
Okay, fair enough.
But I like the score. I'm just saying, top 5.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
I agree with you as a playfulness or not family oriented. You are right, though. It is about camaraderie among like the spy crew a little bit.
Yeah, like when I watch the Bond and all of a sudden they throw in that Bond theme or something like that, you get excited. You kind of get like, oh, okay, this is getting really cool.
Yeah.
The Mission Impossible stuff, that's not my reaction. You know what I mean? I just kind of laugh almost. It's just too playful. I don't know. It's anyway, I will do my best to make this all about Mission Impossible.
No, I want a
going
Bond
forward,
comment.
but I really need to watch one. You need to call me out. No. You need to put me on a very short leash.
But that's where I am excited for the franchise deep dive on it, because
I know, but no one needs that. No one needs 25-minute review.
it's not like Bond. Well, speaking of, I'll wrap up here. Folks, sorry to say, even with all the production talent behind it, this film was lacking in identity. It was lacking in its own distinction in 96, and I think even today. There's very little personality, the stakes are not communicated well in the plot, and possibly this even fails to be a love letter to the original, if indicated by, that original cast getting a little... the word was despised, this rendition. So overall, I was not too impressed. And like I said, I'm thinking this might be even a pass with the series itself. We're going to go ahead and give Mission Impossible 1996 a 44.
Wow, in the 40s.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that good.
Wow, okay.
And like I said, I can get behind a lot of the
here.
Production talent on this one. It
Right.
just, it was not, the magic wasn't there for an action film or, Mission Impossible otherwise.
This is a very important number here. 44.
Yeah.
I mean, this is starting off the Mission Impossible with 44. Okay.
Hopefully up, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think it's maybe an important thing too. Maybe we can start this now with all these Mission Impossibles just afterwards. How do you like this rendition of Tom Cruise? This glasses Tom Cruise.
Oh.
And young short hair. Because in 2, we have long hair Tom Cruise.
Right, yes.
You
He
know?
definitely goes through an evolution. This Tom Cruise, that's what I mean. It's kind of lacking in identity a little bit.
Okay.
If anything, in 2, he's a douchebag, but it
works?
It kind of works in the craziness of the movie.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see as the series goes on, the evolution of Cruise.
Let's jump right to it then. Like you said, 4 years later, this is the year 2000. This is Mission Impossible 2. Same deal, they're all PG-13. This is slightly over 2 hours. Let's get into it right away. How are we back with this big blockbuster?
And a big blockbuster it is. I mean, you look at the poster on this thing, it's like summer. It just says summer. It doesn't even give a date. It's just all of summer was Mission Impossible 2. Also, I love that this is officially called MI2.
Yeah, MI2.
Yeah. But it's kind of like a Too Fast, Too Furious situation here. Folks, it's a little mildly disappointing that this is the first John Woo film that we have to cover on the podcast, a true legend in Hong Kong cinema, and without a doubt, a godfather of gung fu action in a subgenre. He may have some really bad movies under his name, but this man is a proper action director. And this made a super interesting match for the franchise, not only for rekindling a sequel with a lot of energy after 4 years in hiatus, but also to show the energy these movies needed to distinguish themselves in the spy action landscape, to make their own identity. So, as silly as this movie was in times, and almost so bad it's good, I was much more positive on this than I was the first one.
Okay.
And wow, is this just very 2000s. I mean, our opening scene has Oakley sunglasses, followed by a Limp Bizkit remix of the theme. I mean, need I say more, folks? This is outrageous. Oh, yeah, that's right. And he's free climbing a mountain,
Yes.
just a sheer cliff face.
Was that what you thought was in number 1?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
thought so.
In the recesses of seeing this as a child.
Yep.
This movie has a lot of so bad it's good vibes, but the camp of the whole concept has been clocked up. It's fun, it's sexy, but not too far from that Fast and Furious vibe and how ridiculous things get sometimes.
Sure.
So I think maybe take an ounce of seriousness out of the whole idea of Mission Impossible and amp up the action, and that's what you get in 2, and I think in a good way.
Well,
Again,
especially if the action was missing in the first one.
yeah. And Woo's killing it as far as action goes.
Okay, cool.
Ethan Hunt is riding solo until he has to pull a new team together to stop a bioweapon called Chimera being released on the public. We get a pretty significant romance with femme fatale Nia Hall, which keeps Ethan in the game for more than just the mission. His opposition is cut from the same cloth, however, being a super spy gone rogue and knowing all of Ethan's tricks, which unfortunately I think that's going to be a lot of the opposition of these films. They're always going to be a spy gone bad, basically. This has so much better of an opener in the plot, really makes a difference. We see a fun introduction to our villain, a bioweapon MacGuffin amping up the stakes a lot more than just like a list of names. And what do you know? Our villain uses the same disguise text as Ethan. This is a fun conflict for an action film, and how the film actually uses some little bit of misdirection of who's in a disguise and who's not in a disguise. It follows through for the entire film. This gives the film buy-in time and gives the plot some runway. Something wholly missing from the first film. There was no engagement with the plot in the first film. It doesn't help this movie too much because, you know, the first hour or so is dedicated to recon and this romance subplot, but at least it sets the stage and shows us the stakes instead of telling us the stakes. That first film, it was all prescription. They were all just like, oh, this means a lot. You better understand, this means a lot. This, you feel it a lot more. You feel it in the opposition, and even just, you know, again, this bioweapon. It's better.
It's more, it's bigger.
It's an amped up sequel.
I mean, and maybe not too surprising that it's a sequel. And maybe one, I don't know, I was surprised that it kind of took a back seat, some of the action. But at the same time, if it is coming off a 60s show, what are we going off of here? Maybe that was action for the show.
De Palma's a super old director, too.
Right, yeah.
So him coming
maybe
to
this
this...
kind of makes sense a little bit.
Yeah. And that's where I gave it, at least in watching it, some breathing room to say, like, all right, is this doing right by the original show? Is this a fan film, you know, in some ways?
Now, this doesn't... You wouldn't say this is like 2 doesn't feel like a complete rebranding.
I think it does. Yeah.
It's that big of a difference?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. If only for Woo's crazy action style. I mean, Ethan Hunt is a kung fu legend in this. Like, he is Bruce Lee in this. They put him on wire fu, obviously a classic Hong Kong technique for action films. So yeah, it does really feel like something else. Adding to that 2000-ness of the movie is an absolute array of digital effects and editing choices, which feel right in line for Woo's directing at the time. I'm looking at you, Face Off. But across the board, they don't look that great. I'll tell you what does look great, though, are the gunfights. Woo's expertise in filming shootouts is on great display here. The final fight is completely kung fu and fantastic. All over this movie, Tom Cruise is pulling off serious wire work to do flips and somersaults and all this stuff. And it helps, again, make sure this film has its own identity. We even get the iconic doves and birds flying out for each of the fight sequences, which, again, flirts a line with so bad it's good, but... Man, I was in love with it.
Can you go through that a little bit?
So John Woo always has in his shootouts a motif of putting doves everywhere. You see
like people running and then them scattering.
Yeah. The doves coming out. If anything, a lot of those
interesting thing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why he would do it, but it looks great. It's silly. But it's just how I would give credit to the 80s-ness of an 80s action film. These doves, they're so 2000s. It's still great to see, and it makes for really awesome sequences as far as actions go.
Okay, I love it.
These doves, I'm pretty sure, comes from like a hard-boiled or older kind of kung fu films. And maybe, folks at home, if you're familiar with this trope of doves in action scenes flying out in slow motion, probably comes from like not a scary movie, but like one of those spoof movies, spoofing, the trends at the time, especially coming out in the 2000s. Tom Cruise is creeping up the unbearable scale on this one.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. The fact that our first scene is him free climbing is just really excessive. He's excessive all over this. He's all over this. He was largely inoffensive for the first one, but was also just adding to that lackluster aspect. So while it might be more of a douchebag here, much like the clocked up campiness, I think it works slightly better. I'll put a pin in it for now until I see him kind of become the modern Ethan Hunt that we get basically post Rogue Nation 4, I think it is.
Post 3. I feel like we get rebranded starting with 4.
Yeah. And he's, more of a leader than just this cocky guy that's super spying on his own.
Yeah, because I don't really think he's supposed to be douche in the newer ones.
Yeah. Right. And especially with him growing older, that's how the brand is going to evolve, and the stories are going to evolve.
And Tom Cruise is trying to live forever, man.
He really is. I think more so than anything, this is, like the first one, a little bit of an anomaly in the franchise itself. And, it's that long hair. I don't think he rocks that long hair, but this is his
Brought it up with Tom Hanks the other week.
Oh, really?
We were talking about in the freaking Da Vinci Code.
Oh.
It's the worst Tom Hanks haircut.
These long-haired hippies out of here.
With Tom Cruise, yeah. I don't like long-hair Tom Cruise as much.
He is like Oakley Sunglasses 2000, like personified in a human being. Yeah. That is Cruise here. I would say this film has some serious razzle-dazzle. The ending action sequence is downright awesome. There is a motorcycle sequence that brought a smile to my face the whole time. And again, that end fight sequence being all hand-to-hand fight choreography was really great to see. It was good to see, even apart from my leanings and respecting Woo's directing style. And clearly, the type of kicks that Tom Cruise does, he clearly has a Asian fight choreographer behind him.
Damn right. That's straight.
This guy is not
The man likes to do it right. The man likes to do it right, man.
Yeah, this guy is not coming up with that himself. So, but that's exactly why we call it Razzle Dazzle, because it makes you forget that there was nearly a whole hour without action, no less focused on a pointless romance here. I think the shift from spy action to action film with spy wrappings is an important evolution for the franchise. I would just note for viewers and folks at home that you may give this one a shot, especially in going through the franchise, viewer beware of that 2000s-ness, just like I would note for an 80s film oozing its own time period. We're going to go ahead and give MI2 a 60 on the dot.
Okay, 60. Big jump.
Yep.
And I can only expect the action to go up from here. Now that we kind of have set the table and we kind of know where we're at now.
Yep.
One thing that we can also talk about after each one are we in the era of there's still one big stunt that Tom Cruise has to do? Like I would say with this one, it's a climbing.
Sure. I would say there's I don't know. It's how much I like action and an interesting action choreography. I would say the motorcycle sequence at the end is a big stunt. I think this had multiple stunts.
Okay, because you know how it is now. Everyone wants to watch.
Yeah. If I really had to boil it down, you are right though that the cliffhanging or the free climbing is the big stunt.
Anything with the first one that stands out crazy?
There's a train sequence, but it's got some bad CGI.
Okay. And it should note, by the way, so 2000, this had a budget of $125 million.
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
Oh, sure.
And then even in 1996, the first one had a budget of $80 million, which I thought that's a lot, in my opinion. Very financially successful as well. But okay, so 44 for Mission Impossible and 60 for MI2. So I like this.
We're trending up. 60, and again,
I cannot wait for 3. That's one of my favorite lines of all movies.
Really? Okay.
And JJ.
Yeah, that's true. I'm excited to go back to JJ's directing, which of course has been a minute.
His birthday today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Look at that.
In the newsletter.
Look at that.
All right, Finn, let's take a huge jump now, all the way to 2002, but really it's a big jump in type of movie.
Yeah.
This is a Spike Jonze film, which we don't have a lot of experience as far as daily ratings is concerned. This film is Adaptation. Curious to know why this week Adaptation's on the list. And for Spike Jonze, how did you like it?
Yeah, so folks, I'm diving back into this uncomfortable zone for my reviews, especially while I have the bandwidth for it in the 5-movie slot. I'm back with Charlie Kaufman writing the script here. And boy, oh boy, did I pick a doozy here. In case you didn't hear, in our Anomalisa review, I explained that his projects are a bit intimidating for me, mostly because I don't care for some of the peak works, or at least the works that are most critically praised. But Anomalisa was great. So giving him more shots and tackling, some of the most critically praised films is the challenge that I want to kind of set for myself. And that's why, Adaptation kind of made it on this week. I watched this with my brother-in-law, John.
Okay.
And wow, is challenge the word here? Because, if there wasn't enough of an uphill battle, now we have Nick Cage thrown into the mix, playing two roles.
That, I'll tell you what, that is the biggest, most potent recipe for a challenging film.
Right.
Kaufman writing, Spike Jonze directing.
Yep.
Nick Cage with two roles.
Two roles. Very prominent roles. So
okay, all right.
Largely, I can call this movie challenging because of how meta the story is. As a viewer, you really have to be engaged with what plays out on screen, but also be aware of some real-life Hollywood aspects. I wouldn't call it a no-go if you don't know these real-life Hollywood aspects, but that's what I can kind of do as a pre-prep, and hopefully through this review as well, put some training wheels on this because this is a really great movie.
Okay.
Director Spike Jonze is a good sign, though. This is only one of 4 feature films he has helmed. Granted, he is tied to being John Malkovich, the one of the Kaufman scripts that I don't really like, but it's actually something that we see behind-the-scenes footage of in this, of being John Malkovich in this film. So that's where this kind of meta element is coming through. Yeah. And 2013's Her is the other end of that spectrum. A seriously great movie and continues to be increasingly more valid as science fiction predicting the future with kind of these parasocial relationships with technology. So I like Spike Jonze a lot. He just doesn't have much as far as features films go.
Yeah, different dude for sure.
Yeah. Tom, holy shit. If there was ever a movie to solve my specific problem with Kaufman's writing, it was this one. I mean, again, not a lot big use case, but this was almost made. In Adaptation, we follow Charlie Kaufman, played by Nick Cage, who is deeply struggling with adapting a screenplay from a book that is going to be made into a movie. And I mean deeply struggling. We watch Nick Cage play Charlie Kaufman, and I had my concerns, but it really works. If you watch the trailer or look up this film in any way, it might not faze you, but I'm telling you, the movie is brilliant. The story is multi-layered in its kind of juggling act. We see Charlie Kaufman's life playing out while he's trying to adapt the real-life novel, The Orchid Thief, a real novel that you can pick up. The movie then acts as an adaptation of the period in Kaufman's life where he struggles with the screenplay and meaning in his life. I mean, he kind of goes through this kind of breakdown, this existential breakdown of what his life means. We then see in flashbacks the writing process of the book, The Orchid Thief. Meryl Streep plays the author Susan Orlean, and adapting the real-life Orchid Thief played by Chris Cooper, who got the Oscar for this. And best of all, in itself, this movie is an adaptation of The Orchid Thief. It is like so many layers.
So many layers.
I mean, talk about a demanding movie. Like, you really gotta be engaged with this thing. And that's where, to make sure that experience is leveled out and people can appreciate the good in this movie.
Yeah.
I kind of want to lay out how many layers there is to this movie being called Adaptation. It's like 4 or 5 layers of adapting. And is really brilliant. I love this movie.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I love this movie. So well executed, so unique. We'll talk about, with Asteroid City, kind of a meta story. This film is just so well implemented and doesn't drive you away from it with its meta-ness.
That's the biggest thing. Were you finding yourself frustrated with it?
No, I think
you were just enjoying it.
Yeah. Now, granted, I was really tuned in, and I was trying to, I knew this was going to be a challenging movie.
Yeah.
And that's how, again, I would give those training wheels to folks at home listening. But why I thought this was so brilliant is that I felt the way the premise unfolds is so engaging because we really only tackle Kaufman's crisis and Susan Orlean's, Meryl Streep's kind of writing process of when she's first writing the book. So you're dealing with those 2 layers, but then as it unfolds, you see that the word adaptation is the entire backbone of the film, is the skeleton of the film as a concept. And just man, it can definitely be confusing at times, but man, it was just entertaining to watch.
It demands your attention.
Yep.
And keen eye, but really just pay attention and actually follow the story. It's not something you can just put on in the background.
Exactly.
I can only imagine how challenging it is to make that work. Honestly, as a director, as a writer, to make it work. The fact that it comes together really well to Nick Cage's. Sometimes those movies, when you step away and you say, well, maybe I should watch it again. Or maybe on a second watch, I'll even like it even more. Those are gems.
Yeah.
Those are gems when you can watch a movie again and actually get more from it or something like that as well.
Absolutely.
Returning to it and finding more, it's great.
Absolutely. And the fact that the film exists in this kind of like this fluid space that Kaufman is trying to adapt this book. The movie serves as that adaptation. It's adapting his life. It's adapting the author's life. It's adapting the subject of the book's life. I mean, it's next level. I mean, I was
a lot of juggling. I mean, again, it's impressive that it works.
Yeah, I was really impressed with this. And I think on that note, it's on the back of performances.
Okay.
This whole thing works because of performances, because these characters are real. It feels like good writing because the characters are real. Off the bat, I was really worried about this being a puff piece, especially for my, me being on the outs with Kaufman's writing to begin with. But, folks, you can feel my eyes rolling when I realized this was a Kaufman biopic written by Kaufman himself. But what saved it, I think, was a great performance by Nick Cage, mainly because it solves any criticism of this being a puff piece for Kaufman. The depiction through Cage's performance is just so unbelievably unflattering and so genuinely pathetic that it just absolved any feeling of this feeding Kaufman's ego. Like, this is not an ego piece. Like... There's no way that he got enjoyment out of this portrayal by Nick Cage. He's really doing a number on him, like almost to the point of embarrassment. Also, this is quite possibly my favorite Nick Cage performance. I would say the only thing that comes to mind is Leaving Las Vegas, where he plays the alcoholic.
Oh, okay.
But like, as far as like performances for Nick Cage, no less that he's playing two guys, I mean, wow.
It would be good to return to some.
Yeah.
Like Raising Arizona comes to mind, but I haven't watched that in years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he got the nom.
Yeah.
Like you said, Best Supporting Actor went to Chris Cooper. Nick Cage got Leading Role nominee. Meryl Streep got Supporting Role nominee.
Yep.
And then, of course, Kaufman got nominated for Screenplay.
Yep.
Or Adapted Screenplay, whatever, yeah.
Absolutely. So when it comes to, this being a juggling act, Cage plays both Charlie and his twin brother in the story, Donald. Two Cages in one film. So, I mean, Nick Cage fans, rush to this. I mean, this is your movie. It's about as much Cage that's ever been put on one film. So, most shockingly is that it looks pretty great. Most scenes are solved practically with only one Cage ever being on screen at once. It's not like I was expecting a good special effects out of this film, but I found myself rarely able to catch any moment that it looked rough when they're both on screen, which is clearly done through probably a mask and then a digital editing to put Cage's actual face on it. But I just appreciated that a lot of scenes were just solved practically. Not mind-blowing, as far as what tricks they would have to do, but refreshing in the world of de-aging process and CGI, dead people and everything like that. So it's important to note, though, that as meta as this film gets, it is, within that real film industry specifically, it's still fiction. Kaufman does not have a brother, for reference. Meryl Streep is another example of this. She is truly great in this role, playing the real author, Susan Orlean. But I'm pretty sure the film isn't going after any kind of biographical portrayal of Susan Orlean. There were plenty of critical nominations for this film, as we just went through, but the sole Oscar win goes to Chris Cooper for Best Supporting. And him being the subject of The Orchid Thief is one of the best parts about the film. If anything, the flashbacks when we snap back to Meryl Streep and Chris Cooper, those are the normal points, because it's just an author following a guy as the subject of her novel. And those, I feel, again, that's where, as wild as this premise is, gave us a chance to be like, okay, solid ground. All right.
Get your bearings, bit of a life raft.
Exactly. Not only that, two actors killing it, an interesting story around this weird character of the Orchid Thief. his role in the story is the spark of inspiration that all these writers are having difficulty adapting. So I just really enjoyed those moments in the film because it played out just like a good drama, period.
Yeah.
But then was in all this orchestration of the story.
I kind of like that. I like that. Chris Cooper, that doesn't... It's a name I don't think many people know.
Yeah.
The moment you see the face, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. He plays, speaking of Jason Bourne, he's in the Bourne movies as kind of the chief, the CIA chief.
Okay.
In one or two of them, I believe. He's also tries to bring Bourne in. He's also in The Patriot. He plays one of the generals that's kind of like on Mel Gibson's side in The Patriot. And then he's also in a ton of other things.
Yeah.
He's just kind of that guy. When you see him, he's like, oh, that guy.
Yeah.
But that's cool that that's cool. I mean, he got the win.
I know, yeah. And a heavy year as well in 2002. A lot of competition in 2002. Lastly, a quick shout out to Brian Cox from the recently wrapped up Succession, who has a brief but impactful role as this writing teacher guru in the story, and he's just phenomenal. He's just so good.
He's good. He's great in Bourne. He's great in Bourne too.
Yep.
Because he's in there as well.
But I think the reason why this film was so great can be credited to the writing itself. Puff piece or not, however you see it for Kaufman. I mean, he really killed it here. The dialogue feels so good because these characters feel real as possible, and that's because they are real. Flashback to our episode 2 weeks ago, and this is a movie I actually like that's about movies. And we get another with a new release slot this week with Asteroid City. So, Tom, this was the first movie I watched this week, and it was also the last.
Hey! Called it in the beginning.
Yeah. I could not shake it, and I need to see it again. I think you know what that means. We're going to go ahead and give Adaptation 2002 an 85.
Whoa!
Yeah. An
Big boy alert!
Absolute big boy alert. I'm telling you.
This first of the year? For new or old film. I'm going to say yes. How about that? Because it means more than that.
You're right.
85% for Adaptation.
Yeah. It was
You
against...
ticked it into the months. Wow.
Yeah, against all expectation. Believe me, I was kind of going in thinking I was going to hate this movie, but man, was it like no other.
Wow.
It is a very, very special film.
Fantastic. What am I saying? We did Ferris Bueller this year.
Oh,
anyway.
right. That's what I was thinking of.
Wow. Okay. And would you also say people are going to come away with saying, I need to watch this again? Like, do you think it's going to be a common thing?
I think so. Just how I couldn't shake it. I was I knew it was somewhere in the 80s because, again, it was so unique and the execution was right on. There wasn't anything about this film that I said, okay, not only is this a very lofty concept, but there's problems in that it doesn't achieve its concept well. It doesn't execute upon it well.
How fast into the movie did you realize this is something special?
Actually, John can attest to this. As soon as I realized that we were like 3 layers deep on the concept of an adaptation, I was like, wait a second.
And not in a bad way, which is huge.
Yeah.
How did brother-in-law John like it?
He loved it. This was on now a growing list of movies that we're chipping away from.
Love it.
Just so
Perfect.
happens that we're tackling a lot of Kaufman. So
Well, I'm so glad that you watched it then again.
Yeah.
They're giving Kaufman a try.
yeah, I had to.
Starting to get it a little bit, huh?
I guess so. And that's why I wanted to. That's the heart of why I wanted to watch these movies.
Wow.
Even if I came away with opinion that this film is very praised online as the Oscar nominations.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I mean, if anything, what's challenging there is maybe putting myself in the line of fire and saying, "Hey, I don't agree with people on this one. I don't think it's that great." I'm so immensely happy that I did, get it entirely, and I felt that it was so great.
Wow.
So.
Okay, folks, don't sleep on it. It is Adaptation. It deserves the praise. It's an 85.
Nick Cages. Nothing else got it.
Yes. And I've been making a point to say almost every week, just like for people who are new coming to the podcast, because we can see that there are definitely people new every week coming. 85. Anything at 85 or above, we consider this to be a must-watch film. And it is so good. Mm-hmm. It's hitting enough marks for enough audience members that everyone basically should see this.
Yep.
For a whole slew of different reasons. So, again, he ticked it. 85 is a big deal. For others, 85 is not a big deal.
Sure.
85 on Rotten Tomatoes, nothing special. For us, very special.
Yep,
we
absolutely.
actually, we like to use the range of the numbers. I'm happy for you.
I'm happy I watched it and got out of my comfort zone a little bit. And I mean, it's a wild movie, but hopefully like I said, in the effort of training wheels on such a wild concept. Hopefully, others that, folks at home, if you decide to watch this, go in with an open mind and see where this wild ride takes you. It's a really, really unique and interesting film.
Freaking love it. Anytime we get a daily double watch from you.
That's why I said writing's on the board.
It's just right away. That's your big boy alert.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and go into the producer segment then. After coming off of a must-watch film, Vin. This is a very big deal here. So, okay, all right, folks. So we do have a producer this week. Been a little dry around here, but that's all right, Yeah, we see
dry spell.
We see more and more people every week coming and checking us out. So that, of course, is a big deal. That's what we really love to see. But hey, our good old friend producer Sean is back this week, Vin. Sean's coming in with a $10 donation.
Thank you so much.
And he wrote a note along with it. He goes, "Thanks for the shout out on last week's show when talking about CGI. CGI is the worst. It has ruined the movie industry and takes people out of the experience. I get there is a need in some instances, but less is more. Let's bring practical effects back. That's the creativity and the movie magic we grew up loving. Do you have a recommendation on best CGI in a movie?"
Ooh.
We have to really set some thought.
Yeah. Like all time?
Yeah, I don't want to say that there's an obvious, like if you top of your head, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, I don't know. Sean also writes,
any chance he gets to bring up
you keep on thinking about it. He goes, also want to add that I've watched more animated films this year than I have in the past 10 years.
Wow.
Thanks for the recommendations. By the way, he goes, none of them were Pixar.
That's great. That's awesome to hear, though. I'm super happy. And even like what we did with covering maybe not like traditionally like anime as a secondary to animation on the Spider-Man episode. I was happy to explore weird animation and like kind of once and done animation.
Definitely.
So.
And it's funny because Pixar, we've really been taking our knives out on Pixar lately, I think for good reason. But it's also kind of opened our eyes to some other studios and other stuff going on because it is everywhere. Come on, we even like the second Puss in Boots movies.
Yeah, it's true.
And even though every time I go to say it, I call it Piss in Boots, it was actually pretty good. But Sean, thank you so much for being a producer this week. You're an executive producer of episode 89. You continue to produce the Daily Ratings. We thank you all so much. Again, folks, if you're new kind of to the Daily Ratings, this is how we do things. We don't the show's not supported by advertisers. We're not just going to sit here and pitch ads to you. The show is supported and produced literally by you. If you listen and want to become a producer, you go to thedailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab, and then you give us monetary support. We also call it the value for value system. Look at Sean. He watched more animated films this year than he has in the past 10. He's getting concept. Right. He's getting value from the podcast, and he's also enjoying it. He's having a good time as well. So that's value in his pocket. He's going to go ahead and give some value in our pocket, and that's through monetary support. And hey, when you write in, when you donate, you can write in a note just like Sean is, and we're going to read it here on air. You know, if you're going to take time to give us some cash to produce, we're gonna take the time to write what you have to say.
Absolutely.
And it could be something like Sean said. It could be questions. It could be critiques. It could be love, hate. It doesn't matter. Again, it's at dailyratings.com. You go to the donations tab and you become a producer. You can show us the value that you're getting. It's kind of the way we're doing things. Numbers are going up and up. One of the most important things you can do right now is to get our name out there. Whether you're talking to your friends or family members, anybody talking behind you, waiting for the line in the grocery store, and the movies come up, hey, give us a little bit of a shout. You hear people bitching about Rotten Tomatoes, that's where we want to be.
That's our spot.
We want to be in the conversation, and we want you to help us kind of get in the conversation. If you're interested in the newsletter that comes out every Tuesday morning, you head down to the bottom of the page, or the bottom of any page of the website, put in your info, and you're good to go there. So that's enough for that. Sean, thanks a lot. And Vin, let's keep things going.
Okay.
We have our in theaters now, newly released films. This is No Hard Feelings. This is directed by Gene Stupninski.
Oh, yeah. My note is not going to bother with the last name.
We kind of talked about it before. This is getting a lot of attention. One, for the Ron Sheen comedies. Is it coming back? Also, it's getting attention for some of just like underage stuff. It's okay. Older person of 10 or 15 years going after kind of young kid. Is it okay just because it's Jennifer Lawrence? It's a
right, that
girl
double standard.
going on boy, not a boy to a girl.
Right.
Whatever. It's in the news. But most of all, Vin, how did you like no hard feelings.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tom. This is yet another one of those movies that you wouldn't catch me dead seeing. So
I disagree.
No?
I don't usually I would agree with you on like not wanting to see a film. This one I disagree. She's fine. It kind of looks somewhat funny, but most of all, Ferris Bueller is in it.
Right, of course.
And as we talked about on our Ferris Bueller episode,
I almost forgot Broderick was in it.
the connective tissue is always happening in the episode. But
absolutely,
because he's not in anything.
Right.
It was nice to see that he was in this.
Yeah, he's kind of like a yuppie hippie guy,
right?
But yeah, it's a straight up R-rated comedy, which hopefully I was going in and saying, hopefully this isn't pulling teeth, and it wasn't pulling teeth. It wasn't outright bad. As you said though, Tom, there has been a growing dialogue online that these raunchy comedies are coming back. So my skin in the game, if you will, in seeing this as a critic was, let's get my opinion sorted out on this wave of comedies, so that I kind of understand where I stand with these and how to view them. Which comedy's always a challenge, so subjective. That's the growing frontier. That's the final frontier. Is that and silent movies? How do I rate these movies? Yeah. Director Gene won't bother with the last name. Like I said, comes from a longtime producer credit with The Office. His first film, 2019.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, wow.
Producer, but on set and everything,
okay.
So definitely comedy background. His first film is 2019's Good Boys, the R-rated comedy around little boys skipping school, and clearly his interest in these kind of adult comedies continue here. So I really do wish him the best of luck. I honestly would have liked to cover Good Boys, so maybe that's a watch for future weeks, because I thought that looked a little bit more funny than this. So
okay.
Jennifer Lawrence is a hot surfer girl in a gentrified beach town going through a little bit of a quarter-life crisis. In desperation, she accepts a job to date a rich family's son, who is a shut-in 19-year-old nerd, before he sets out for college. The son is played by Andrew Barth Feldman, who is a relative newcomer to film, but has a sizable background in Broadway. And from here, we see the age-old rom-com play out, with the washed-out consequence of the son finding out about the job, predictably looming over the plot, hitting right when you think in that end of the second act to create some drama, and then, that's how it goes. I'll say J-Law's comedy, not too bad, though I haven't really seen her in other performances like this. I would say probably the closest, Silver Linings.
I was going to say Silver Linings.
Yeah, maybe Don't Look Up, but she was kind of this like off-brand version of herself in that, or like alternate version. Honestly, her character is far from the worst thing here. She flirts a good line with hustling this family, which is fun, and still having heart. I would say if there's anything maybe absolving some of that criticism, Tom, of, is this creepy? Is this a double standard type of thing?
Right, the age, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's in her character, actually, that it proves otherwise. That won't stop people from kind of not seeing the film and throwing an insult like that or criticism.
Right, talking about should this type of film be made, basically.
Right.
That's the big, yeah.
Exactly. But I think it fixes itself, or it solves for it in the actual character work, which is good. She still has a lot of heart. This works slightly similar to something like in the raunchy comedy space that we've seen before. I personally thought of comedies like Wedding Crashers or those other type of Judd Apatow films that hopefully we'll get to, where the character is an asshole at first but then grows softer and softer as the movie goes on. Most importantly, this movie did seem a bit odd for Jennifer Lawrence to take on this late in her career, but I'll admit this, it at least looks like she's having a lot of fun in the role. I think that's half of kind of what this is about. If the actor doesn't look like they have energy, like they don't want to be there, if they're just going to check, if it's going to show its face anywhere, it's going to be in a comedy.
Yeah.
So
she's not an old hag either. She's like 32.
But you think of like a raunchy comedy like this early, stepping stones. She's
like
already
23, 24-ish age, right.
Yeah, but for the record, Jennifer Lawrence, I never called you an old hag. But where the comedy doesn't work is in a lot, and I mean a lot. I would say probably a good 60% of the jokes are these millennial versus Zoomer jokes, which I mean it's
It's cookie
relentless.
cutter schlock is what that is.
Exactly. And it's around this kind of quarter life crisis. One of the more interesting things the film does is that this beach town that she lives in is a victim of this gentrification. She has these rich assholes everywhere around her, taking away her town. I wish more was done with that. No. I mean, it's character motivation for her, but it's never really playing into jokes, which I thought was a missed opportunity. This character goes through a quarter-life crisis, and part of that is realizing she cannot hang out with kids anymore. So all these Zoomer versus millennial jokes, I mean, they are pretty much all the same setup and punchline for the whole film. And more importantly, I mean, it's going to be tough to get a laugh out of me, but there really wasn't getting laughs out of the theater either on this. I feel like when the more absurdist type of comedy came out, she does some sort of front flip on her face, or she kicks a girl in the crotch. Those are where the laughs came out from the theater.
Was the comedy shared? Meaning, you know what I mean? Like, so percentage of laughs, did they mostly go to her, or was it the supporting cast that was actually kind of picking up the slack in that department?
I would say almost all J-Law.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That surprises me, because I kind of look at the supporting cast, and I would almost be like, oh, they would be great in this spot. They would be great in this spot.
Sure.
Or this would be a great moment for comedy or something like that, dealing with that person.
Yeah. And maybe the move for her career is a similar kind of Sandra Bullock vibe, that, equally she goes into these comedy, Lost City of D comes to mind.
Right.
No.
Well, I'm still, it's like a 20 years age gap. Let's not treat this as she's really moving transition.
Right, it's a post-mortem
Maybe
for
she just
Jennifer
wanted
Lawrence.
to do a comedy, yeah.
I'll leave it go. I would say editing is the real black eye in the film, and folks, I know this isn't going to matter too much to to the average audience going to see this as a fun comedy, but it was some bad editing. There are near constant continuity errors with scenes that don't match up to the previous one. Prop placement is like super messy. A lot of these scenes look like they were rushed or just first takes, which is, I don't know, disappointing in a comedic sense. We also get some product placement around premium brands that it just sucked to see. It's not as bad as like Sonic or like an Adam Sandler movie at worst, or one of his heartless Adam Sandler movies, we'll call it. But it was still annoying to me. I bring it up with kind of a grain of salt mentality with this, just because, I don't know. I mean, I think if you're really going in, you want to see Jennifer Lawrence in a funny role. You like this premise of kind of like dating outside of her age. Not probably bother you too much. Definitely bothered me on a production scale, though. Okay. So, and really, I suppose this isn't a bad movie. It's all been there, done that, though, and no performances to really elevate it. If these 2000 style R-rated rom-coms are going to be coming back, I think there are two ways they could succeed. One, a platform for exceptionally funny talent, preferably new talent. Or two, the plot is new and refreshing, and especially if that romance has to be thrown in there. This movie is neither of those things, and we'll see if any of the other ones coming out are going to hit those marks either. We're going to go ahead and give No Hard Feelings a 52. No Hard Feelings.
Wow,
J-Law.
okay. I guess it kind of surprised me. I thought this movie was actually going to be a bit more of a actually funny. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's because it was being billed as more as an adult comedy.
Sure.
Obviously, it's rated R, but still, it just seemed like it was going to have a bit more of an edge.
Yeah.
Interesting. 52%. Okay. Little lackluster.
I think if I really just had to pin something down, is that they just really leaned into these generation jokes.
Weird, because it's like it can just be rinse and repeat.
Exactly. Where at
Not
first,
to mention, this was over.
Yeah.
Aren't we over that a little bit? Like, how many?
Well, apparently not.
I mean, Survivor did that as a season like 5 years ago.
Right. I mean, that was really as I was sitting through, I kind of just sat with the idea, and definitely after in the note refining process of like, how is this different than a Wedding Crashers? You get asshole characters, find some heart, find love. I think it's just, I don't know, that's where it comes down to those 2 degrees. Is the plot different, new enough that shakes things up? or is the talent exceptional? And I mean, I thought J-Law was good, but she just wasn't like just exceptional like you find in those other comedies.
Writing too, I would add to that. I would say acting, writing, and then what is our plot even?
Sure.
Because with that rubric, I mean, that's a very big umbrella. If you're just saying, okay, asshole characters that kind of get better throughout the film, you can do a lot with that. Right. It's a very large to high view.
It's too much.
Well, and actually, and I'll kind of just with that point, it's another important aspect that, like, I love that we have the podcast along with it. As just the website's a companion guide with this. They work hand in hand where there's a lot more sometimes than just a number. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's nice that you can kind of go on, listen to the podcast because you can get the ideas there.
If only for these 50s, which could be just such a...
It's very muddy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm saying comedies in general.
Yeah,
because, I mean, talk about sometimes... A good movie is oftentimes a good movie when you're talking about 85s or above. With comedy, boy, that's talk about a range of hitting for different groups of people in different ways. So.
And that's what always concerns me. And I'll be honest.
It's a big week for you.
Yeah, we're all over the map.
I mean, you did Adaptation, you know what I mean? You're doing a comedy. We're making you feel really uncomfortable this week.
Yeah, until the franchises. Yeah.
52%
the cruise
for
control.
no hard feelings. So we're going to be going long a little bit, folks, because let's move on to our next film.
Yep.
This is Wes Anderson's new release. But okay, first of all, Wes Anderson just announced his next movie already.
No way.
He is pumping them out.
Wow.
This is Wes Anderson's new film. This is Asteroid City in theaters now. And Vin, let's get into it right away. We saw the film together.
Yep.
And the rule is when we see a film together in theaters, I'd have to give it a Tommy Two Shoes.
Is that
so we have that to look forward to.
Do you feel strongly enough about this film that you...
Like, let's say if I saw it on my own?
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe. That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. Because honestly, I just feel the same. I thought this was good, but I don't know if it was like, wow, Wes Anderson's on a streak right here.
Yeah, folks, we purposely didn't really talk about it too much because the big thing is just like save it for the show. Right. Save it for the show.
Right. So this is the latest release from the King of Quirky, writer-director Wes Anderson. There's only about 3 films I haven't seen from him, the rest being rated on the website or in the spreadsheets to be put up there. We specifically covered Fantastic Mr. Fox and The French Dispatch on previous podcast episodes, so folks, if you're interested in actually listening to those, you can go ahead and try to seek those out. And I have to say, I mean, Anderson's a super consistent director. I don't know if I've been more sensitive to these batting averages ever since the Inarritu study.
It's fun. It's fun to kind of think about that.
And maybe plays into, the rankings of, top directors and whatnot on the site. But
nice sports reference too, by the way. Very unlike you.
Rare. Hey, thanks. I try. But really nothing of his falls below 70 on the site. And I think that just indicates that even if you don't love the style, his films are kind of inoffensive and
very much so.
Yeah, and for the most part, even if you don't like the quirkiness of it, it's still visually striking. His style, his symmetry, his director hallmarks are so fine tuned. So,
and I'll just kind of also add a note in. It's so funny how similar his films are, but also can be so different.
Yeah,
how you can feel a certain way with Isle of Dogs and A French Dispatch. When you look at Grand Budapest, I mean, you loved Grand Budapest.
Oh yeah, that's his top for me.
Especially that year, even that was a big movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be the top of his game, kind of.
Sure.
So it's just funny to get some guy where his style is so consistent, but at the same time, boy, are the movies kind of different in tone, or at least in manner, kind of.
Yeah. There's been a lot of commentary creeping up online, kind of critiquing Wes Anderson as of late, as his style is lazy or formulaic. Personally, I think as long as the core story is different, and he's writing and directing all of these, his stylings can be the same, as long as the inside is different. So I was interested to see this, to just put that to the test, because there's a lot of dialogue of just like, all right, when's Wes Anderson going to do something new? I think he does something new. It's just that the wrapping on the present is always the same. So,
and to be honest with you, I don't know how much that bothers me.
Sure.
You think about something that's been we talking about a lot is copycats lately.
Yeah.
And we talk about John Wick copycats. We talk about this. We'll probably be talking about action copycats more we get into Mission Impossibles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is just like, okay, so this guy who's super original is copycatting himself. If a guy is going to be a guy, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
My issue with other directors are trying to be him. I like it that we have directors that are so them, that we can point to them. We can say, this had a little bit of Tarantino to it.
Yeah.
This
We
had
talked about that with Sisu.
Yeah, this had a little bit of Paul Thomas Anderson. Now we
Yep.
have a little bit of Wes Anderson. I like that we have these people that have such a name for themselves with the way they do things. That's them. That's their identity.
Absolutely.
So if Wes is going to be Wes, I'm cool with that. The moment other people try to be Wes, that's when that's when I start having an issue
Sure,
with it.
I love that, and more so than anything, I don't see other people trying to do it. No one has his eye for detail. No one has the attention span to make all the symmetry in the shots.
Yeah.
So any critics out there of Wes Anderson, I'd say, hey, find me someone else doing it to that labor of love that these films are.
Absolutely.
So, as an unintended pairing with that adaptation, this film is pretty meta. The story is about a production of a writer's story. The plot of the film is about a small arid town named Asteroid City, with a massive cast of actors mirroring the real movie we see. But the story itself is a stage play that we see through black and white letterboxed flashbacks around the production itself. The split focus allows us to understand actors behind the roles and see how performances are affecting them personally. Luckily, the story of Asteroid City is equally interesting, but I'll be honest, it kind of is robbed of stakes a little bit once we're in Asteroid City, with how much is just conveyed that it is just a stage play. The stakes of the film itself, I feel, were not in when we were in Asteroid City. It was in the actor side of this.
Okay.
You agree with that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I guess I didn't quite put it into terms like that of where the stakes were. I felt like the entire movie had no stakes. And almost not in a bad way.
Sure.
And I hate to
They're
say, and
comedies.
I don't want to use this as an excuse. I feel like I might be saying it a lot in this review, but in a very Wes Anderson way, it had no stakes.
Right.
Because it can be so playful.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Sometimes it's almost like you're watching toys and not people on screen.
Absolutely.
When it comes to Wes Anderson's characters.
Like some scenes specifically, absolutely. I think a good understanding here is that they're all comedies at the heart. He dips into dramatic themes and maybe even heavy themes sometimes.
But I will support that notion, though, just to not lose it, that because they touch so much and make it so obvious that we're dealing with Asteroid City as a play and everything like that, I do agree that it strips it of a meaningfulness or an importance kind of, and does take it more when you're in those black and whites, when we're dealing with the actual stage play behind the scenes of the stage play, that's where your real kind of content is.
That's where the story actually
but
is. Yeah. I was just kind of tuned into this just because I preferred the Asteroid City aspect of it. I don't think as also this was conveyed too clearly, even in trailers, that there was this kind of split story going on. I think it was just all Asteroid City.
Right.
So, I'll be honest. I'll call the start of this film a little bit of a drag. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like until I was really hooked, I was just kind of like, all right. It's just kind of going all over the place.
Yeah.
But things do fall into pieces and grab your attention. Hopefully, I would say your buy-in, folks at home, for this film is the sheer amount of fun performances on screen and this relentless style of Wes keeping your attention while the pacing ramps up. And I think the pacing does get there eventually. It does clip along. It's also only an hour 45, so...
Yep. When did you get hooked, can I say? Was there an actual scene, or you kind of slowly dipped yourself in the pool?
I think as soon as all the science fair started with the kids in Asteroid City, that's where I was engaged a little bit more. The setting seems to be pulled from this mix of like a Roswell Area 51 inspiration, mixed with kind of a nuke testing empty waste right out of a Looney Tunes episode. There's even a Roadrunner in this and everything. I was all about this as a fan of this type of aesthetic from like Mars Attacks and stuff like that. I like that 50s UFO vibe. And I just got to say, I mean, the usual symmetry work that Anderson has is, normally able to be seen, appreciated. I feel now it sticks out clearly for a lot more audiences to notice it in these bleak landscapes. There's literally nothing else going on in the frame besides the symmetry that he wants to get across.
Very much a blank canvas for him to kind of play on.
Yeah. So, while his symmetry is probably Wes Anderson's hallmark, as we've said with previous directors, what their hallmarks are, I think it's easier to digest here because there's nothing going on in the background. Budapest Hotel, as much as I love it, sometimes things get lost in how much is going on.
Yeah, it's busy.
Yeah. I would say, a really huge highlight is the ensemble cast here. I think it's why you see it, especially with how much it's played into the marketing.
And that's what you see, and that's very Wes Anderson. There's a huge ensemble cast.
Yeah,
people that make appearances. I mean, there are major actors that make appearances that are the smallest of appearances.
Like not even recognized by the film, basically.
But huge cast, and everyone was, in my opinion, great.
Yeah.
Shockingly, the kids were great.
Yeah.
The kid acting from teenagers to 6, 7, 8-year-olds, everyone was phenomenal in this.
Yeah.
Everyone took the directing and the writing of Wes Anderson and just performed exactly how probably he wanted them to. Yeah. You can imagine.
Right.
Something that I really like too is that so many supporting characters and everything like that, but really the supporting characters that actually have some sort of importance somewhat in the role all got a little moment to shine, got a little bit of dialogue or a little bit of monologue they can go on. And it was really cool that everyone kind of took a turn at some point. And with the writing being so good, the unique style and just visually was super enjoyable. And it gave everybody a chance to shine in a good way. Even Tom Hanks. Like, I don't think there was anyone who was like, oh, they were not pulling their weight.
Right.
Didn't feel that at all. And I also was like, boy, no one's really... It's tough for me to say who was the worst three. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Everyone was just very good.
Yeah. And I think my thought is that they get grouped together in little clusters so that they get the time to shine. I would say the comedy itself is very reminiscent of 2012's Moonrise Kingdom, especially with how many young actors get the focus. For example, the teenagers are grouped together for visiting that science fair, and they have their all little story arcs as smart kids within Asteroid City. But what surprised me is a lot of the somber tones, specifically Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson having a lot of quiet sadness, which honestly was reminiscent of Anderson's even earlier works and A Welcome Return. You look at things like Bottle Rocket, Darjeeling Unlimited, they're more kind of sad comedies where this captured a little bit of some of that in these clusters of stories.
And definitely, as you said, comedies are very much a through line.
Yeah.
It never got so serious that it dragged you out of the comedy.
Right.
Something was always there to keep you with a bit of a smirk or keep it going.
Yep.
It lighthearted a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's cute how, I don't want to just call the soundtrack cute, but I really did love the soundtrack for just how cute it was. It's always playing in the background, echoing these like late 50s Cowboys tunes. Artists like Tex Ritter and Tennessee Ernie Ford are just kind of like echoing endlessly in the desert. Which I don't know. I was on the fence for. I said to myself, "Is this a really, smart or creative use of a soundtrack?" It's just kind of playing the songs of that time, but it got me. I liked that it was just so much in the background that I don't know. I couldn't really critique it for not being more purposeful.
It was mild but appropriate.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And a very eclectic mix. He really pulls some deep cuts from these old, like this weird, like 50s, cowboy tunes. So, and really a cute comedy is where I'm walking away with this one as a whole experience. I think critically speaking, is this one of the weaker Anderson films he's put out? I don't know. Like I mentioned in the summary, the stakes of the story are robbed a bit by seeing the behind-the-scenes productions, but by no means does this drop below that benchmark of quality, passion, and relentless eye for detail that Wes Anderson is known for. We're going to go ahead and give Asteroid City a 71.
Oh, wow, 71.
Yeah.
That's a good score.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a solid movie.
I thought maybe you were going to be in the 60s. I didn't quite know where you were going to be at with this one.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about it much.
Right.
And it has, I don't know, we didn't know. Even when we first kind of were in the car, we both weren't like unbelievably super excited for it.
Yeah.
It was a little rare. You think you would be excited for a Wes Anderson. But 71's a good score, Vin.
Absolutely. And I think that cute comedy, again, there's so many marks it just hits as a quality. I can't really tear it down anymore. I mean, it succeeds on a level, even if you may not just more so care for the flavor of his type of comedy.
It's funny how much that we can we agree in a lot of ways about the film for sure. Because it's a very cute movie. A lot of these characters just remind me of toys. It's honestly, I was thinking, it was like halfway through the film, and it's just like, oh, we're just watching sometimes just toys on screen almost. And it's a joy.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, how you said where that's all I can really say about it, or that's all the bad stuff I can really say. My first notes were that nothing is outstandingly bad with the film. My biggest thing with Wes Anderson, which is I'm not the biggest fan. I like French Dispatch, but really wasn't the biggest fan of French Dispatch.
Okay.
And the reason why I feel like his dialogue can get lost in his own sauce. I feel it's really compelling, and you're paying attention to it and you're enjoying it up until a certain point. And it reaches a cliff and then it just nosedives because it's just too much.
Your eyes kind of glaze over with it.
You glaze over and then it's like, okay, is it important?
Yeah.
Is it meaningful? Or is it Wes Anderson just having some sort of complex randomness in his dialogue? And that's because that's what he does.
Right. I think that's a great note.
With this film, I think it gets to the edge of that cliff, but doesn't quite go over. And that's I like it. I think in that place, I'm liking this more than French Dispatch, even though it's a smaller movie for sure.
Sure.
Just in scope and scale.
Yep.
But overall, I mean, we talked about the acting already and the actors. I thought everybody was hitting it. So it's I don't want to go through it, but Tom Hanks was great. Everyone was great in it. But man, ScarJo, really enjoyed her on screen.
Yep.
I thought she played her character well. But I just want to give a shout out to Jason Schwartzman.
Yeah.
Not only have I not really ever liked Jason Schwartzman, this is by far the best thing I've ever seen him in.
Wow.
I don't know if I ever enjoyed him in much of anything else.
Okay.
And I think I could make a prediction saying I think this is the most I will ever like Jason Schwartzman's ever in his career in the future.
That's great.
I thought he looked phenomenal. He delivered his lines in the best ways possible.
Yep.
I loved watching him on screen. I mean, really enjoyed his character. Again, talk about against all odds.
Yeah.
Against all odds.
Against all
One thing I don't have, but I don't talk about Jason Schwartzman ever because there's nothing to talk about when it comes to Jason Schwartzman. In this film, he deserves some praise in this one.
That's great.
Really, really enjoyed his character. Other than that, the colors are phenomenal as in pure Wes Anderson. The light pastels mixing with the very vibrant neon blues and oranges, phenomenal against the desert. Really, really good. Really fun. I also thought the length was good. Because of Wes Anderson, his dialogue can go too long. I thought even Grand Budapest, little long. I think even some fat could be trimmed. French Dispatch definitely felt that way.
Yeah.
Where his segments just kind of went too long. At an hour and 45, I think it's long enough where you can kind of melt into the story a little bit and get into it, but also it's not overstaying its welcome.
Absolutely.
So I like that aspect because it's something I was nervous about. I think I asked you first thing you got in the car. I was just like, how long is this? And you're like, why do you ask? And it's just I don't know. It's just something. I hope it's not too long.
Right. It doesn't overstay its welcome.
Right. So that hook that you felt kind of, that you started to get into it.
Yeah. When was that for you?
I was a bit of a slow beginning, but I think I felt the same way for most of the movie. And then I started to like it more and more. Something about, I just maybe felt that I got it. I don't know. I have to say, something happened 2/3 in, just in my own brain and this feeling of it. This is an overwhelmingly, extremely American film. And it's not even that we're set in the West or that there is a cowboy in it, although those are elements.
Right.
Something about it is very American. Each individual character there's just, if you had to make a list and say, I'm going to take off this list and just put it in a movie of just like America, even nods or anything like that, characters or whatever it is, whether it's people or just ideas, so many of them I think are actually in this film.
Yeah.
I was actually trying to think, and I thought maybe rock and roll wasn't in there, and maybe just like modern day more R&B stuff.
Sure.
That's all just like music related. There's so many, from celebrity to military to just classic like the UFO stuff.
The different parroting styles of the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The nerds, the socialites, the elites. Tom Hanks is a rich guy living on a golf course or whatever. I mean, you have big city a little bit. I mean, the Margot Robbie in it for not long at all.
Right, seconds.
I thought a beautiful scene actually.
Yeah.
But a sense of our art and culture and just I can really go on and on. I made a huge list because I was it just felt very, very American, and I would put it as just a very American film. I don't know if that was his intention or not, but I was coming
Sure.
away dripping in that a little bit.
Yeah.
I loved it personally.
Maybe Americana as a style. It's not really like patriotic per se, but it's still Americana to it. Yeah,
very much so, in so many different aspects. So, but overall, it was a very cute story, unique structuring too. I love the breakdown of the acts. I just think as filmmaking, it was nice to see. And that's just Wes Anderson. Sometimes it's just nice to see a film like that.
Yeah.
So, that being said, this gets 2 shoes, no laces.
Fantastic.
And I don't know. Maybe with Wes Anderson, you would think he's a 2-shoe, 1 lace kind of guy.
I love getting down in the nitty gritty of the 2 shoes.
But I think I might be feeling the same way about you, where I can't say overwhelmingly bad stuff about it. I can't really give it all like an incredible amount of praise. Either.
Sure. I think it's a two-way street a little bit with this.
A great little dip in another thought or imagination of Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
Nice to be there for an hour and 45. Probably won't return to it all too much in the future like I would at Grand Budapest.
Very true.
And I think that's what a 2 shoes represents.
That's great. That's so good. I love it. The grading criteria of Tommy Two Shoes.
I think the array of films that we're going to have, that is the ones that we go together,
You're right.
it's going to be a great list.
Oh, absolutely.
Puss in Boots, Wes Anderson stuff. It's a whole big array that we'll get.
Every James Bond.
Vin, looking at these films or anything else in the future, anything you want to touch on, or do you want to roll credits here?
The only thing that I'll touch on is just, again, the shout out of the franchise work, just because folks at home, if you like following along with our list, if you're looking at the newsletter ahead of time to see what movies we're covering, which I think is a good function of the newsletter, these franchise works, these are easy to follow along with.
Yeah.
Next week is Indiana Jones, a perfect 5 spot. Week after that is Insidious, a perfect 5 spot, and the Mission Possibles being after that, being 3 and basically forward. If you have interest in watching them, if you want to even write in ahead of time, Tom and Vin at the Daily Ratings, happy to get any sort of feedback and talk about what you guys think of these big, it's the summer franchise. It's like MI2, that poster just says summer.
I hope you don't get too burned out. I like that we're doing franchises. I think we'll do these 3, and then it'll be fun to just kind of tackle some single stuff as well.
Yeah. And July has like Oppenheimer and things like that.
I can't wait for July.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And that is tom.vin at the Daily Ratings.
Yes. Yeah.
If you just want to shoot us an email. Okay, Vin, thank you so much. We're actually going to... I'm going to take a quick second if I can.
Sure, go for it.
I have some stuff before the credits. I think we just have to start a new small segment of the podcast. After every week, we send the podcast out.
Yep.
I realize I make some sort of audio mistake. I get something completely wrong. I have something in my head, and then I say the exact opposite to people. But last week, we had talked about Snowpiercer and Chris Evans. Chris Evans is the guy in Snowpiercer.
Yes.
Not... Who plays Thor? Why can't I remember?
Hemsworth.
Boy.
Oh,
Hemsworth
I see.
Hemsworth's brother has nothing to do with Snowpiercer. That's all Chris Evans.
Right.
And I also, I'm going to go back of making fun of the Netflix movie Triple Frontier.
Oh, really?
Because we were bashing.
Yeah.
I turned it on to fall asleep to the other night.
You loved it?
Totally fell asleep, but I lasted enough seconds to realize who composed it.
Oh.
So you're going to have to watch it too because it's a disaster piece.
Oh, really?
Vin's modern day up-and-comer, big composer.
God.
Anyway,
no.
Folks, Vin, thank you for watching these films. Thanks for stopping by. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time here. We have Mission Impossible with a 44%, Mission Impossible 2 with a 60%, Adaptation with an 85%, No Hard Feelings with a 52%, and finally, Asteroid City with a 71%. Folks, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our website, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you receive from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, folks, but we also want to be independent from those corporate sponsors, so we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.